So, just to recap on the episodes from this week, we saw a lot of references to death and dying. It was a thing that happens over and over again in these episodes, is that the people in the lives of the girls are either getting sick or dying unexpectedly or dying after an extended illness, which is a thing that as queer communities we are so familiar with as well. So this constant looming of the specter of death in their lives is a thing that we share as queer people, and what makes the content of this thematic kind of content even more relevant or poignant for us as queer viewers. We also see at the same time a kind of unquenchable thirst for connection and intimacy and companionship. And that never dies. We even see that with Sophia, whose character is supposed to be in her early 80s. So I think that there's something really beautiful about the demand for connection and not just community and interpersonal connection, but specifically like intimacy and desire as a theme that continues on and on in the episodes. And one of the things that I think was interesting about one of the episodes that we watched, That Was No Lady, where Dorothy is having an affair with Glenn O'Brien, is that we see this like one of the opportunities that Rose's character is kind of positioned as this like moral conservative, which is not consistently the case throughout the series. Like we see Rose go pretty lefty in a bunch of different contexts or examples, but in this episode she kind of frames the priority of like the hierarchy of marriage over Dorothy's connection with Glenn O'Brien, and that she shouldn't be having an affair. And Blanche responds with this phrase that we have to take happiness where we can get it. And I feel like that is was particularly resonant to me this week, and also just in my life this week, and thinking about how that relates to queerness. And one of the things that it made me think of was this story or parable that was shared by Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun who runs a abbey for Westerners in Pleasant Bay, Nova Scotia. And she talked about the story of a woman running from tigers, and the woman is running through the jungle from tigers, being chased by tigers, and she comes to a clearing, and she's running, and the tigers are catching up, and she gets to the edge of a cliff. She sees a village over on the other side, and she can't jump, and the water is rushing below, and she sees sharp rocks and crocodiles kind of sunning themselves on the rocks. So it's water's rushing below and tigers behind her, and she decides to jump, and she grabs a hold of a branch and is kind of saved there for a minute, and then looks up and sees a mouse gnawing at the vine that she's hanging on, and has to come to terms with her own imminent death. So she's thinking about this and kind of in a panicked moment, and looks to the left and looks to the right, and at the right she sees a little shrub that's growing out of the side of the cliff, and she looks over and sees it as a strawberry bush, and there's one strawberry that's perfectly ripe. So she picks it and puts it in her mouth and eats it and thoroughly enjoys it. And I loved being reminded of that story through Blanche's comment. It was a reconnection with the importance of connecting to our everyone has the potential to connect to our own innate joy as humans, and it was really meaningful to kind of see that thread come through again and again in these episodes. and in particular be kind of Blanche's antidote to Rose's moralizing around Dorothy's relationship structure, relationship patterns. I think that that's also one of the things that we as queer people have had the opportunity historically to do. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of assimilationist ideology that's kind of crept in around the prioritization of like a marriage model, but historically we didn't have access to that, so queers formed other relationships in structures that worked for us in those moments, and thinking about that as an infinite set of possibilities, and about a tool that we use to connect to pleasure, and that pleasure is a right and also a virtue. So thanks to the girls.